Second factor, second fold of the path, developing wise intentions. This is starts on page 40. And we renounce, we set an intention to renounce and abstain from acting out of greed, hatred, and delusion. We train our minds to meet all pain with compassion and all pleasure with non-attached appreciation. Again, these are our intentions. We have the intention to cultivate generous, kind, and compassionate wishes for all living beings, and the intention to practice honesty and humility and live with integrity. I'm always going to come back to how this second fold of the path is so connected with our meditation practice, so connected with mindfulness and concentration, and the effort that it takes to be really clear and to have that pause of what am I about to say or do, and where's it coming from? What's the motivation? What's the intention behind this action? What is actually my intention here? Without mindfulness, we're sort of unconsciously reacting most of the time. With mindfulness, we can sometimes identify, oh, I'm not coming from such a good place. I'm actually in a bunch of greed right now, or I'm in a bunch of anger or hatred right now, and not a good place to act from. I'm not coming from wise intentions. I'm coming from, mindfulness will show you, the more you're mindful, the more we are mindful, the more we'll see, oh, this is craving or this is aversion. Delusion is the really difficult one, because that's the one where you don't know. You're so deluded, by its very definition, we don't know when we're deluded because we're deluded. You just don't even know. So we set these intentions. We learn it when, again, like all of Buddhism in my mind, you learn the philosophy, okay, free from greed, hatred, delusion. Try to cultivate compassion, non-attached appreciation. And then you know what to do. And then however long it takes us to get very skilled at doing it. Because certainly in the beginning, we know what to do. And sometimes even years and years into the practice, we know what to do, but we're not quite able to do it. I don't know if that's been your experience, but we have this model, this map, these teachings, and it's like, okay, here's what to do. Be compassionate towards your pain. Yeah, I'm trying, and I'm going to keep trying, but I'm not always successful. Somebody was talking about Ajahn Chah earlier, who's the lineage, Thai forest tradition lineage. And he once said that he thought that even for people who'd been meditating for a long time, that something like between 50 and 70% of the time, we know what to do. We have the right intention. But we don't have the skill yet. We know what to do, but we can't quite do it yet. Like we have the intention to let go, and you're telling your mind, like, I'm really attached, I should let go. I have the intention to let go of this thing that I'm clinging to. This person, this place, this behavior, this emotion, this sensation, whatever it is. And there's the intention to let go, but you don't quite have the skill yet to let go. And there's almost like, you ever had your fist balled for so long that it gets stuck in that position? Where it like gets cramped? where it's like I don't think the word is atrophied, but the kind of it's just like, oh, I can't. Now it's like frozen, and I'm trying. You have to kind of like slowly, and it's like cramped. I heard somebody give the example of like holding on, like you're late for a airplane or something like that. And you're holding onto your bag, and you're running through the airport, and you're holding on, and then you get to the airplane and you can't open your hand, and you're telling your mind is saying like let go now, but you like it's frozen. It's like just become cramped, closed, clamped. So we develop the intention to be non-attached, and then we have the humility to admit that a lot of the time I'm attached and I'm not great at letting go. We have the intention to be compassionate, and then we have the humility to admit that I know compassion's the right thing, and I don't always have the ability to be compassionate or to meet it with compassion. And sometimes my mind is saying like be kind, and then the other side of our mind is saying fuck you or whatever it's saying. My sense if I reflect on my own experience with practice is that in the beginning having positive and wise intentions was foreign to me. I didn't come into recovery with positive intentions. I came in with self-centered fear intentions. And then it took quite a while of meditating and being of service even when I didn't feel like it, and showing up and doing the actions before before positive intentions became natural. That it's a very gradual process for most of us. And that there is something to fake it till you make it. There is something to like, I don't feel compassionate, but I'm going to still try to act that way. I don't feel generous, but I'm going to still try to be generous. I don't feel like picking up the phone and checking in on somebody. I'm going to do it anyways, that counter instinctual action. I'm going to develop these intentional ways of being and until I feel like it. Does that make sense? Is there any questions about intention? Okay. So a big part of our intention in Refuge is to train our minds. Meditation, mindfulness, compassion, loving kindness, forgiveness, equanimity, appreciation, appreciative joy. To develop these healthy mind habits and to recover and to uncover wisdom and the perspective that human beings do. We have the ability, even us addicts have the ability to develop wisdom and compassion, and that it'll come from taking the actions, and that meditation is one of the core actions. So let's spend some time meditating together. I feel like I've been talking a lot since after lunch, so maybe because we've been sitting around rather than doing another sitting meditation, let's do a walking meditation. And I don't know if everybody has done walking meditation, but it's such a good active way to train the mind in an activity. Let's do loving kindness practice as a walking meditation. So the loving kindness phrases are, I could probably put them on the screen. Let's see. I do have the ability to put them on the screen, but I don't know. Did that work? Oh, wow. Look, it worked. Can you guys see that? No? Yes? No? Oh, no. Yes. Okay, good. So let me put, may I be happy. May I be at ease. May I be free from suffering. Okay. Okay, you probably already know these anyways, but you should have on your screen now the loving kindness phrases. Did that work? It did, right? Okay. So, may I be happy, may I be at ease, may I be free from suffering. Find some room in your home, in your apartment, wherever you are. And just with each footstep, just say it to yourself. And we'll just do this loving kindness practice for ourselves instead of opening it to everyone for now for this practice. Just saying to yourself, with it one footstep, may I be happy. With the next footstep, may I be at ease. With the next footstep, may I be free from suffering. And then just repeat, may I be happy, may I be at ease, may I be free from suffering, may I be happy, may I be at ease. And it's a way to engage these pathways and practice meditation in a dynamic and an activity, in a walking meditation, just walking back and forth in whatever room you're in. You don't have anywhere to go. You don't need to go far. It's just the act of movement and training the mind. May I be happy. May I be at ease. May I be free from suffering. And let's do that for 20 minutes until 3 o'clock. Got it? Cool. So we'll continue. So the last section is the three middle factors, the third, fourth, and fifth factor, or fold of the path, which is that of speech, communication, and community, our engagement with community, and actions, what we renounce, what we engage in, the 5 precepts, and livelihood. And so I'd like to have I'll reflect a little bit and like to have an open conversation with everybody about what we can put under ethics, Buddhist ethics, as part of Refuge recovery path to recovery. In the first factor, and as we develop our practice, we learn more and more about karma and cause and effect. And so all of the renunciation that is encouraged around how we communicate, how we act, and how we earn money or relate to money, is all in service of protecting our karma, of encouraging us to act and speak in a way that develops just a moment. Joseph, it looks like you paused the recording. Okay, I got it. All of the... It's all about karma, right? The bottom line is it's all about our karma and trying to develop ways of being in the world, the way that we communicate, the way that we act, the way that we that minimizes and of creating negativity for ourselves, and that maximizes and encourages us of creating positivity and wholesome karma for ourselves. So this was the place where, when I was creating Refuge, I needed to find a place for refuge in the Sangha. And in the original formulation of the Eightfold Path, there wasn't a place where the Buddha talked about the importance of Sangha. He talked about it in other places, but I wanted to connect it with the Eightfold Path itself. So I felt like right speech, wise speech. How do we communicate? Where do we do that? We do that interrelationally, and we do that in community. And so I turned that chapter and that process of the Eightfold Path into not only how do we communicate, but the importance of communication and the importance of communing, of community, of connecting and taking refuge in the relationships with other recovery people, and that becomes our practice. And that, of course, we have a lot of communication in our life outside of our relationship with other people in Refuge or in our recovery communities. But there's something about having other people who are on the same page, who are also trying to be careful with their speech and who are also committed to compassion and to forgiveness, and where I hope that, Refuge becomes a place, and that your sanghas and your meetings become a place where it's okay to have some conflict, and that at times that's part of our practice. That right speech and wise communication isn't going to mean that like everybody is fake nice all of the time. I mean, there's something to authenticity and to, we're all going to be unskillful at times. And that we can do that in community and still love each other and still forgive each other, and that it can be a little bit messy sometimes, and that's okay. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it certainly makes sense to me. I get so concerned about communities that are trying to be so careful that nobody is authentic anymore. Nobody's real anymore. Everybody's kind of being fake rather than genuine. I personally, I would like genuine kindness and genuine connection with people than ending up feeling like, oh, I don't need. It's hard to even tell where people are coming from because they're just not willing to take any risks. And because like, oh, I might say something unskillful, so I'm just never going to say anything. And especially as a bunch of recovering addicts, like, of course we're going to at times be unskillful with each other. And then we have the practice of compassion and forgiveness and tolerance and love and acceptance, right? That's our code. That's our practice. That's our principles. In community, so, why is communication? Is what I'm saying true? Is it useful? Sometimes we want to say something that's true, but it's not useful. It's like, that kind of brutal honesty where it's like, yeah, it's true, but it's just not useful. It's just not appropriate to say, even though it's true. So is it true and is it useful or appropriate? Is it the right time to communicate this? Because sometimes we get so impatient, so urgent, we want to just blurt out. It feels true, it feels useful, but right now it's, like there's a meeting going on. You don't need to blurt it out in the middle of a meeting, or sometimes it can wait. Is it true? Is it useful? Is it the time? And then, is it coming from a good place? Is it coming from a place of kindness? What's our intention? What is our intention in this way that we're communicating and what we're communicating? So that's the basic guideline for our communication. And then community being the second piece of this fold of the path. And seeing community as our practice, seeing Refuge and Sangha and the attendance at meetings and showing up online and developing these friendships with people who are also practicing and recovering, and knowing that in community there are going to be different levels of hopefully you're going to have the opportunity, we are going to have the opportunity to be a part of a community where there's people that have been doing it longer than us and are wiser than us and are able to give us some guidance, right? That kind of some level of a hierarchy, which is like, oh yeah, cool. Those are the people that know what they're talking about on some level and I can learn from them and I'm inspired by them and they're, our mentors, our role models, our benefactors. And then hopefully there's a level of community where there's kind of peers, people who, we all kind of got sober together or came in together and we're in this together. And whether those are people in your local Sangha meetings or people you meet online, and you find your tribe of people that are like, hopefully, kind of supportive and around the same process of development as we are. Following me so far? And then the third level, I think, is, the people who you've been here, you've been meditating, you've been recovering, and then there's the new people who are just coming in, and an opportunity to be of service, to mentor people, to show them, help support them, check in with them, the kind of people that we're. So, we want teachers and mentors, and we want peers, and we also want people that we can be of service to. Now, as many of us have experienced, get those people that come in and they're brand new, and then they become peers. Like they stay sober for a while and recover and meditate and, and they're no longer the new person. Now they're part of the group and they feel more like peers. some of my thoughts about community and the importance of community, and again, the importance of staying in community, even when it's difficult, even when there's difficult people in the community and that annoy us, or that's part of our practice. That of course we're not going to always like everyone in the room all of the time, and then that gives us an opportunity for, could I be more compassionate? Could I be more accepting? Can I show up to the meeting um, as a practice in compassion and tolerance? And if good things aren't being said, can I step forward and say them? Can I be of service in that way? And also knowing that sometimes we're the ones that are really suffering or in a difficult place. And maybe we're the ones that are the annoying person in the room, and allowing other people to care about us and be of service to us, and support us. That's part of community. Um, any discussion about communication and community before I move on? Comments, questions? Yes. Yes. Yeah. You're welcome, and I'm glad to hear that. On some level, that I feel like in recovery, I know we're trying to be Buddhists and we're trying to do this kind of, but expecting a bunch of addicts to have perfect behavior is just so unrealistic. And we've seen this in Buddhist circles, and we've seen this in recovery, where there becomes a policing. And I've even heard stories of people like getting kicked out of recovery meetings for not being politically correct or not being. Um, and what a tragedy to not have enough tolerance and acceptance of people's unskillfulness to include them, and keep on, letting people be part of a recovery community, even if they don't have great speech or even action. Like, I feel like we have to be so tolerant and accepting and loving and forgiving of each other, because we're addicts and we're sick people and we're trying to heal. And how are we going to heal if people kick us out of meetings because we're swearing, or because we're, you know, not being sensitive to identity politics or something like that. So I'm glad to hear that you guys in Dirty Jersey know how to get down and stay down and support each other. That's good news. And it makes sense. You're from Jersey. Any other thoughts about community? Yep. Ryan. Yeah. I don't know how much my thoughts are. I mean, I'm glad that it didn't hasn't created much of a conflict for you, and that you've been able to find your way, and that's great. And there's, like I said earlier, like there's some real similarities. You know, of course, in the 12 steps, they encourage us to be very involved and to take refuge in the fellowship, and that's, that's part of it. But then they also are asking for a level of belief that Buddhism isn't asking for, and a signing um, of responsibility to a higher power, which is, it's just different. It's just a different philosophical perspective. I'm always happy when people can find their way with both, or find their way in either one, like whatever works for people to get and stay sober, and recover whatever the addiction is. Um, yeah, and I think my mind is a little bit rigid sometimes around what things mean. Like certain words mean certain things. And you can't just make it mean whatever you want to mean, because that word means something. So, yeah, I get a little bit more rigid around some of the theistic language. Uh, but I'm glad that you don't. Richard, jump in. Mhm. Thanks, Richard. I know that there's pros and cons to getting everyone together, and I hear you appreciating the pros of the connection, and of the we're all addicts, however it's manifesting, and that's certainly how the book is written, and what my perspective is, that addiction is addiction, whether it's manifesting around food or sex or substances or behaviors, um, and that the path to recovery is the same for all of us. It is different, when it comes to bottom line behaviors, somebody having to set their own bottom line behaviors, versus the ability to actually be abstinent from a substance, right? That's different than, I always think of, food addiction, is a different issue, where you can't stop eating. You can stop drinking. You can stop drinking. You cannot stop eating food, and you have to find your own bottom line. What's a healthy relationship to food, or to sex, or to money, or to whatever it is, to people. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I think there's pros and cons, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, Richard. My own feeling is I'm also, I think there's something useful also about affinity groups, and men's meetings and women's meetings, and GLBTQ meetings, and food meetings and sex meetings, and you know I think that also there is something that can be quite useful about people feeling even more supported when everyone in the room is has some shared something there, other than just the big shared addiction, but gender identity, the manifestation of addiction in this way or in that way. So there have been um, you know different refuge meetings with affinity groups, and I'm personally not against that, and everybody's welcome to do something like that if they want to. And the model is unity, and I hear you appreciating that. The model is like, yeah, let's all get together and support each other. We're all trying to apply this practice and meditate together and heal together. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Mel. Oh, Sally, go ahead. That I don't know if I completely understand it, the question, but that the kind of with the coronavirus and this almost sort of like ageist kind of thing that's happening around. Right. Right. So the people, I get it. It almost feels like a weird like punitive thing, right? Like the people who are taking the advice of the world and sheltering in place, right, are then not included in the meeting because the meeting's not online. It's still happening in person. Um, I don't know. I hear you, and it sounds. I'm actually a little bit surprised to hear that that's still happening. I thought that all groups everywhere had been canceled, but I guess it's happening differently in different states. I'm over here in the California bubble where, over a month ago they were like, stop, stop everything. Um, so I think that for my encouragement is that it's practice, your practice, right? That feeling of being excluded and the divisiveness. If you can reframe it as, oh, here's an opportunity for compassion, maybe for yourself, the way that it hurts. Here's an opportunity for some. There's also a little resentment here, so here's an opportunity for some forgiveness practice towards the people who I feel are not being skillful in this way. Um, this whole conversation about karma, and it's not what's happening to us, it's how are we responding to it. And certainly what I'm trying to do and trying to encourage people in all of this is, can we see this all as a big opportunity for our practice, and to be bored and to be lonely and to feel excluded or divisive, and can I learn to tend to my feelings around this in a more skillful way. um, and certainly the Buddhist meditation techniques are all in some way or another aimed at how can I be free in the midst of this. You're welcome. Mel. Beautiful and well said, and thank you for saying that. Let me continue, because I'm realizing that we're running out of time, and I have two more factors of the path to talk about, is action and livelihood. So let me, and I'm sorry to give it not as much time as it deserves. I mean, all of these, we could probably take a whole day and talk about each factor. So I feel like this is a little bit of an overview, but so action. Basically, it's the 5 precepts: action and engagement, and this, just what we're talking about: tolerance and compassion, and a practice of nonviolence, honesty, and the Buddha's 5 precepts, which is, don't create karma around violence for ourselves. Don't create karma around dishonesty. Don't create karma around sexual misconduct, negative karma around, stealing, again, honesty. And the 5th precept, which supports all of us and our whole path, which is to refrain from recreational drug or alcohol use. And that's, it's what we're all in, it's really the foundation for us. Understanding of karma, tolerance, compassion, honesty, forgiveness, and there's a piece here on 62 and 63 about kindness as situational ethics. And, even just in that last conversation that we're having, part of our mindfulness is, because I'm also, sometimes it's appropriate to confront somebody's bad behavior. We don't want to just kind of always be like, yeah, you can do whatever you want and say whatever you want. There will be no consequence. But part of it is having enough awareness to be like, oh, wait, that person needs a little bit more space. They don't have the skill. And then sometimes you see, like, actually, this person could probably use some confrontation, and some, this situation calls for some confrontation, and that we should be able to do that some in our communities. But that for our individual recovery and our desire to purify our karma and to create positive karma, taking a vow, an intention to behave in a way that's not violent, that's not killing, that's not intentionally causing harm, to behave in a way that is honest, both with speech and deed, not stealing, not lying. And when it comes to sexuality, Buddhism is quite liberal about sex, consenting adults. And there's a lot of necessary communication, and a lot that I've learned over the last couple years about the complexities of consent and what that means, and that it might not mean the same thing to two people that are engaging. But I don't have time to go deeply into that, but it's something for all of us to reflect on, the importance of communication and consent in sexuality. And misconduct is considered cheating. If you're in a commitment, or someone else is in commitment and engaging in that, again, dishonesty is considered misconduct and unwholesome karma for us, or anybody that's not appropriate, of appropriate age, or so sexual misconduct. And then going into livelihood, the 5th factor, 5th fold of the path. Again, karma, the encouragement here is to try to find a way to support ourselves, to have a livelihood that's not causing harm, that's not, And so some of the traditional things that the Buddha talked about was like, you don't want to be killing for a living. You don't want to be selling, poisons or weapons or drugs or alcohol that are, killing or deluding people. These are, you know, livelihoods to avoid. There's also a piece traditionally about also not benefiting from slavery or selling other people, which I think would include like pimping. Not just sometimes sex work gets thrown in here, and I think I've been guilty of throwing sex work in there. And there are some Buddhists who say that it's wrong livelihood, but my sense, as I've looked at it more, that really what the Buddha is talking about is not an individual or a woman or a man choosing that for themselves, but it's when it's forced on them or other people are making money off of them that it becomes unwholesome form of livelihood. Some of my thoughts, and then I hope that Refuge is presented in a way, it was meant to be presented in a way that like everyone's welcome no matter what you do for a living, right livelihood, wrong livelihood. Like let's get rid of that sort of judgment and an encouragement that you know get into recovery, stay in recovery, look at this stuff, investigate it for yourself, find your own way with it. Many people find like, oh yeah, I was a bartender and I was an alcoholic and I got sober and I don't want to be a bartender anymore and I want to do something else. Other people find, hey, I've been sober for a long time and I'm a high end waiter or waitress or something like that, and I make money off of selling alcohol and I feel totally comfortable with that, and I'm meditating and I'm following this path. And I hope it doesn't come off too judgmental. Again, we're trying to follow teachings that are 2,600 years old, and some of them don't fit as well in our modern world as maybe they did back then. Discussion about livelihood and the five precepts or action, wise action. How's it going for you? Where does it fit? Where does it not fit? What questions does it bring up? And then the second part of livelihood is that it's not just about what we do for a living, but also the importance of volunteering, being of service, helping each other. Nothing? Go for it. Jump in. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. That also makes sense to me, that we can't be too uptight, and that there's some level of privilege around. I'm going to choose, you know, what to do. If you're in a position where you don't have a lot of choices, you just do what you need to do to make ends meet, um, even if it's possibly creating some negative karma for you. Uh, I'll take, I think most people will be like, yeah, I'll take some negative karma and food rather than no food and no negative karma. Yeah, yeah, I hear that. Any anybody else on the call have any, as we come to the end of our time together, anything else about refuge, about the dharma that's on your mind that you want to talk about before our time runs out today? If it's about the ethics, happy to discuss that. If it's about something else, about your meditation practice, about your sangha practice, about anything, just little bit of open time. I see a question about when we'll do another retreat. I think we scheduled one for in 2 weeks. I'm willing to do this every other week during the lockdown. So I think 25th or 26th is a couple weeks from now. So we'll do another one. I was thinking, I'll speak with Rachel and Joseph about it, who organized this. But thinking about maybe doing just a day on mindfulness and the four foundations of mindfulness, and really doing it kind of as a more of a meditation, sitting, walking, going through the four foundations, and doing a kind of day of vipassana mindfulness practice. Maybe we'll do a day on that, and then we could do another day on the Brahma Viharas, where we spend a day practicing loving kindness and compassion and such. There's a question about the Refuge logo. The Refuge logo is, let's see, can you see it? I can't see myself, so I can't see it. There we go. The Refuge logo is, oh wait, still can't see myself. Is the, it's on your screen anyways. It's the three diamonds signify, the three jewels signify the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And so this is a traditional Buddhist way to talk about the three jewels, and so I chose the diamond image for that. And then also, if you see, each diamond has 8 parts. And so there's 5 triangles in the top, and then 3 in the bottom. So each diamond has 8 parts to signify the Eightfold Path. And then the whole thing is a play on the fallout shelter. I don't know if you are old enough to remember the fallout shelter signs, but they're the 3 triangles in a black circle on a yellow background like this, which is where we are meant to go for shelter in the case of a bombing. And since we bombed our lives with alcoholism and addiction, we take refuge in the fallout shelter of Refuge Recovery. Question about RefCon. Was it RefCon 6? I think, yeah, 6 or 7? 6. Refuge Recovery Conference is scheduled for June, what is it, 11th or 12th through 14th here in Los Angeles. And hopefully, we'll see. Is the world, is the clampdown going to let us out by mid-June to gather together in a group and breathe on each other? Not sure. But if we can, we will have the Refuge Recovery Conference. She says 10th to 14th. Is that right? Yeah, okay. I believe her. So, I feel like I missed a question here. What was it? Question about advice on practicing meditations and everyday tasks. I can't quite sit still. Very small steps I can take while doing the dishes. Something I can remind myself to focus on breath. I don't know. Meditation just seems impossible. I hear you, Nicole. I believe we talked earlier, and you're a little bit new, and it feels like that to all of us in the beginning, so you're not alone. And yes, absolutely, you can bring some mindfulness to the activities of washing the dishes and like the walking meditation that we just did. You can bring some mindfulness or loving kindness or even forgiveness, or you can bring these practices in the activities of your life. And even though it feels a little impossible to sit still, the reality is you can do it. We can all do it. Even if you start with 5 minutes at a time, guided meditations are helpful so that you have the instructions, on your coming into your ears. It's saying, come back to the breath. And one of the things that we all need to learn is we need to learn to be uncomfortable. I saw those faces. We have to learn to be uncomfortable. And part of what sitting meditation teaches us is how to, feel anxious or fidgety or uncomfortable in whatever way, and just breathe through it. And you'll come to understand that it's impermanent and that those sensations arise and pass, and that you have a bigger capacity for being with discomfort and anxiousness and than you think. And that it's very important actually to build up that capacity, and that learning to sit is very important. And if you come to Refuge meetings, every single Refuge meeting has a guided meditation. And we sit together and we learn to do it together. And it's very intentionally created that way. And I'm with you. When I started meditating, I also felt like, how am I going to do this for more than 2 minutes? And it was 2 minutes, and then it was 5 minutes, and then it was 7 minutes, and then I started sitting for 20 minutes and then 30 minutes. And then, like you build up. And it's easier to do with a group than it is to do by yourself. And it's easier to do for most of us with a guided meditation than it is just kind of doing it by yourself in the beginning. So you'll find all of those resources. You will join us and you'll be just fine. Last couple of questions regarding forgiveness. How do we deal with other people's inability to forgive us? More specifically, how do we deal with other people forgiving us one day and then being resentful towards us again later? It's painful when people don't forgive us, right? So we have to check in and feel the hurt and tend to it with our own compassion and our own self-forgiveness. And some level of equanimity and understanding that we can't control other people. It's pain, and acknowledging the tenderness that we have and how connected we are and how we want to be loved, but we're not going to always be loved. And part of equanimity is understanding praise and blame. And some people sometimes, and like this question is saying, even in some moments, the same person will be praising us and saying, I forgive you, I love you. And then the next day we'll be saying, like, I don't forgive you, I hate you. And it's just part of it. And we have to learn to have not take it so personal. Other people's inability to forgive is their own suffering, is their own confusion that we can't control, that we can't do much about, but we can take full responsibility for how we respond to it and how much acceptance we have of people, whether they're being loving or not loving. And I hope that makes sense. Other sections in the book, techniques for helping with anxieties. Mindfulness itself helps with anxiety quite a bit. So that should be it. There are some meditations on the Refuge podcast, and we're going to get some new ones up. And somebody's saying, freedom from my substance of choice was huge anxiety relief for me. So maybe we'll leave it there for today and just thank you for hanging in there. About half of you made it all the way through. Half of the people that started this morning. I appreciate the participation. Glad to get to practice with everybody today. And I share all of my perspectives not as the ultimate authority, but really as a member of Refuge and somebody that's been reflecting on and utilizing these perspectives in my own life for a long time. I'm certainly not always right. I'm certainly not always skillful. But I'm always very committed to continuing my life of practice and service, and really a pleasure to get to practice with everybody. Just entering into a meditative state and reflecting on our conversation and practice today. These Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, as we turn towards the suffering, the causes of suffering, as we take refuge in the path that leads to the end of the suffering of addiction that leads to recovery, as we take refuge in the practices, the process, and as we take refuge in the Sangha, the community, each other. And we walk this Eightfold Path, we develop these 8 spokes of concentration and mindfulness and effort and wise livelihood and service and wise actions, engagement, wise communication and community, wise intentions, and wise understanding. May we all become more wise. And together may we support each other and all of the people that reach out for help. May we be there to support them. May Refuge Recovery be a resource a sangha. May any benefit that comes from our practice today be offered outward in all directions to all the people who are suffering right now on this planet, whether they're suffering from active addiction, suffering from fear around the pandemic, suffering from acute pain, difficulty, illness, stress, whatever the cause of suffering is, may we share the merit, share the goodness of our practice with all beings everywhere. May we all get free and stay free, and together let's create a positive change on this planet. So thank you. Any announcements? I saw a couple of announcements in the notes about a 4 o'clock refuge meeting, a 3 o'clock refuge meeting, something tonight. If you want to stay on for a minute and put some announcements, if we could get really radical and we could take the mute off of everybody. Let's see, how do we do that? Welcome. Happy to be with you guys today. So we'll do it again in a couple weeks, 25th or 26th. Thank you.